Oh, it's starting recording. Yeah, we'll start. There we go. And just make sure everything is hunky-dory. Alrighty, so yeah, we're recording. So 5, 4, 3. Hello and welcome to the latest Monty Dean show. My name's Monty Dean. Hey, there you go. Today I've been joined by John Edmonds and Bruce MacDonald. They have a book out called Stardust Ranch. I actually own the book, so it's possible that you can buy it. I didn't buy the digital one. Gentlemen, how are we?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I find it fascinating that John's in the light and Bruce is in the dark. That's not a metaphor. It's just where they're placed on the planet. So, for starting off, because we'll get into what the book is and for, like, say, new listeners, but John, your wife must be a goddess because to put up with all this stuff, and you, because that's the one thing I got from the book was like, this woman is God.
That's the first thing my mother said.
Sorry, John, say that again.
I said she's been telling me that for 30 years. So at this point, brainwashed.
Yeah, well, it comes through the book because she puts up with you. I say that lovingly. Don't get me wrong. Because June the 1st, was it 96 that you moved in or bought it? Or it was around that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, we bought the ranch June 1st of 96. And, we traveled all over. We went all over the country. We even went out of the country looking for places. And at the time, ranches were terribly expensive. And there really wasn't that much that we could afford that, gave us what we needed. And we thought that, being as close to our jobs professionally as possible meant we could still work and have the ranch. And unfortunately, like many things in life, it was just too good to be true.
Yes, we'll get into that. One question, because I flew through the book and there's a lot of information, and I'm not sure if it's brought up or if you have mentioned it. It's like, did you name the ranch or was it called Stardust when you bought it?
No, I named it. I took one look at it and I said to myself, because we came out both daytime and nighttime before we purchased it. And I said to myself, wow, this is in the middle of nowhere. You look up and all you see is stars. And I thought to myself, Stardust Ranch.
Ah, yes. And who wouldn't see? I think that's the point there. That's where everything went weird. Just the name, because that's about
the one thing that actually went the way it was supposed to.
Because with the connections with the extraterrestrials and time portals and all this wacky stuff and the Men in Black and all Stardust is like, well, that makes sense. So, but it's interesting to see that was the starting point. So it's not the reason that everything went pear-shaped, but it's thing. And Bruce, just very quickly, how did you come on board to write this book?
I met John in 2012 through a mutual friend, and this mutual friend was thinking of doing a documentary film, but he couldn't get it together with the any kind of significant production. He called me up and he said, "I know about this really interesting story. Would you maybe be interested in writing a book about it?" And so I met John and we started talking about the book. We agreed to do it. And then the first time, I think I quit in early 2013 after working on the book 4 or 5 months. It just wasn't time for it to be written. It was, I don't know how, how to explain it. It just, I didn't feel comfortable writing it back then in 2013. Does that make sense?
Yes, because I've seen a couple of other interviews with you gentlemen, and you weren't the first writer, were you? A lot of people have tried to do the project, and the energy of whatever's going on, you get tagged by it. Because I know, John, you had what's the term? It's not a late. You finally had your honeymoon after everything. Oh, little kitty. That's that kitty actually runs the ranch. Everyone, that's just like putting it out. But you had your belated. Anyway, you had your honeymoon in Hawaii, and the craziness followed you there. So it doesn't matter where you're on the planet, sort of. And then Bruce, you when writing the books both times, you mentioned that you had interesting sort of energy and experiences. I know.
Yeah,
I've just realised I've asked both of you a question at the same time, so this is going to go well. Bruce.
Yeah, both times. I didn't recognize it as well in 2012, 2013. It sort of just blended into a cacophony of things that were going on in my life as I lived in the West End of Toronto.
Yeah.
It was very easy to pinpoint up on this mountain in Costa Rica. I mean, one of these things is not like the other, and everything is so clear up here. You're at a system level. A human being is very, very clean psychically in an environment like this. So I became uber aware of just kind of a persistent intrusion. I just describe it as a presence you're always aware of. It's like a sound in the background, like a little bit of white noise from a radio station, or the persistent drip of a faucet, but it's consistent and doesn't go away. You have to kind of focus in on it to get it to go away. But when you let your guard down, there it is again. There it is again.
Yes.
And then, and this time I something came in and helped me. I've told this story in almost all the interviews, but we had a ball of white light. I've sent a picture to everybody I've done an interview with. And I think you've actually seen the picture, Monty. And after that, the whole house was clean for the rest of the book. It's just when I left the mountain to go and do shopping, there was a lot of negative synchronicity. But up here, a space was created to finish the book. I don't want to sound weird, flaky, new age, or hippie. I'm not that guy. But it actually happened. It actually happened.
I am. So that's fine with me. And that goes back into the timing of the book in the timeline. Like 2012, 2013 wasn't the right time because of the end of the Mayan calendar. There was an energy shift. And now, 7 years later, one cycle through, it's probably the right time to have this documentation being released. And we are living in interesting times, which is a Chinese curse. Going to John, with the experience that you had in Hawaii, that wasn't the first time that you had the effect of a doppelganger. Or was it the doppelganger in Hawaii? But what happened in Hawaii? That's a better way to say it, because you were there 3-4 weeks, and all the crazy weird stuff followed you, didn't it?
Well, we bought the ranch, and then right after that, we decided to go ahead and take our honeymoon because we had put it off in order to buy the ranch. And then when we went to Hawaii, that was one of the first times that we started realizing that there was a doppelganger type of situation. The problem is we didn't even know what a doppelganger was. I mean, when we first started this whole journey, we were just regular people. We didn't know any better about anything in terms of all this paranormal stuff. We had no idea. We had no idea there was anything really weird about the ranch. I mean, Joyce kind of knew. She sensed it. I didn't sense it at all. I took one look at it and said, finally, I get to stop looking at ranches. I was so sick of looking at properties, traveling all over looking. I took one look at it and I said, yeah, this will work. It's close enough. We can work. It's close enough that we can go into town and buy stuff that we need. And it's big enough that I can have horses. And, there was nobody out here. I mean, we were in the middle of, close to 700,000 acres of absolute wilderness. And so, it was kind of like just moving out to the end of the world. And I loved it. I mean, I really enjoy my privacy, and I enjoy, being out in the country and nature and just being away from everything. I had no idea about all the rest of it.
Yes, because I don't want to give too much spoilers from the book, because it is a fantastical story, and I mean, you just my reaction to the book, though, it was interesting. As I was reading it, I would get sleepy and have to have hour naps, and there's two ways of looking at that. Is either the information was so dense, I actually had to, my body would go shut down, stop, or I would have to pause and let my higher self sort of go through the energy of it, which I found interesting. Bruce, you were saying that how has the book been received with people? Because it is talking about that energy being tapped in. It's not like, you buy the book and all of a sudden your house burns down, but there are interesting reactions to the book, isn't there?
Well, the overall reaction has been really good from the reviews and the people I've spoken to. Some people have found me on Facebook and just wanted to talk about the book. I think it was the way we approached this topic, because people have been writing about UFOs since the 50s and 60s. I mean, there's thousands of books out there, right? But it's become kind of a genre, like I don't know, like Stephen King or something. There's a way that people tell UFO stories, and it's always sort of this like, hey, you're not going to believe this, and you're constantly trying to win the credulity of the reader. When I wrote this book, I assumed the reader was going to believe what I was telling them, and I just told the story. It's a big difference, right?
Yes. I did notice that where it just flowed, where it felt like you were sitting, like talking to John, how we're talking now, and you're just telling the story of like this is, I'm putting forward the information that I have.
When I got my head around this, and the second time when we started the book again in late summer of 2019, it was completely intuitive, out of the blue, that I called John, and we hadn't spoken for 7 years, and the book just flowed out. The editing process was a bit tough, but for the most part, the sections all came out, and it happened really, really nicely, and it was just the time for the story to come out. And my attitude in writing it, there was one section I was just like, wow, I wonder how people are going to react to this. And that would be, what is it, July 11th or July 31st?
That with Brandy, Dr. Brandy?
Yeah, July 31st, 2011 with Dr. Brandy Howe. That was a weird part of the book. I spoke to Dr. Howe, and there's no doubt in my mind she was telling the truth. But I remember writing it and going, wow, people are really going to have to think about this. But my attitude writing the book was, who the hell could make this up?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, who the hell could make this up? I mean, if it were fiction, Douglas Adams would be blushing. The guy who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You just can't make this up. Just do.
You do mention in the book a couple of times the X-Files, which was sort of going on most of the 90s. And I just had an image of yourself, John, just yelling at the TV, "You're doing it wrong!" every time X-Files is putting it out. Like, that's no way would happen.
Monty, I would say this. I did watch the X-Files. I liked them. But I kept saying to myself, you know what? They're so tame. They're so mild compared to what I live with. I just, I was a bit amused, but that was about it. I mean, this is one-stop shopping for weird at the ranch. Because, we've got everything. I mean, we've got poltergeists, we've got ghosts, we've got spirits, we've got, ETs. I mean, you name it, it's here. It's like a giant cosmic bus station or train station, and everything just comes through and does its thing, and we see it all. Now, so it's really bizarre.
Yeah, that reminds me. There is a portal that it's said in the book. I'm trying not to give away too many spoilers. There's enough in there where we won't go through the whole thing. But the portal that's been there for 8,000 years, and it's at least, and it's a very high vibrational energy, which is, I did find fascinating that the negative were attracted to that high vibration as well as obviously the high vibration, and so I can see
coincidence. So I don't think they're attracted to the vibration. They're attracted to the fact that they can use it to travel. Okay, and so it just happens to be high frequency.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah, and there's 3 ranches, and I remember Skinwalker Ranch is the northern one, the Bradshaw's the middle. Is that
what's the middle one, and we're the lowest one?
Now, they're roughly parallel, like in line, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's a very old ley line or an energy line that connects them all.
I don't know. All I know is that I don't think there's any coincidence that we're all in the same line with each other. And the interesting thing is that, I've tried driving and traveling south, toward Mexico. And until you get down to the area in Mexico where they call it the zone of silence, there really isn't anything particularly bizarre beyond that.
Okay. Or there could be just the magnetic field from north to south. So it's fascinating how there is all that connected. And My brain is like going everywhere now. So it's just, that's the question. Because you in 250 pages, you explain 25 years of just weird crap. How often? What was the frequency of something happening? Because I know it was there enough to torment you. Where when you get comfortable enough to forget it, something else would pop up and remind you all. Just I think the negative entities are probably feeding off your emotion of just the anxiety and the anger and all that type of stuff. But if you could distill it into, like, say, once every 3 months or or is it just scattered all across the timeline in that respect?
Well, realize something, and that is there's so many different things happening out here. There's not necessarily any relationship between any of them. They just happen as they happen. We get ET visits on a regular basis. We get, weird stuff that happens every single day. I mean, but it could be just as simple as like a water bottle levitating off of a table 2 or 3 feet off the ground. It could be as easy as just a dog floating across the room. I mean, it's just, it, in its own right, it's absolutely bizarre. But in terms of a collective kind of continuum, the small stuff, I call it the small stuff, is not particularly, one of these things that you go, oh my God, look at that. You just go, yeah, put the dog down.
Yeah, you're used to it now, yeah. When you leave the ranch and go visit a friend, it's like, Joyce, I'm bored. Yeah, I know the table hasn't moved at all. It's
and it's weird because we've traveled all over, and it's I explain it by saying, once you've been at the ranch and spent a fair amount of time and made a connection here, what ends up happening is you have sort of a Bluetooth relationship to the ranch and to the energy. And I mean, I have people that still call me and get hold of me 8-10 years later that have been here, and they say, yeah, you know what, we're still seeing things, we're still having things happen.
Yeah, I wonder if that taps into the personal frequency of you existing, or whoever's there. It opens up the channel. You can not tune in, but that block that's usually there, part of the veil's been parted. I'm going through all the different metaphors, but it's it just like you're whoever stays there is just slightly attuned, and then it's the energy. I don't think it's following the people that stayed there, but they go back to their lives, and then they start seeing their own sort of point of view of reality. Because it's I do like in the book where it's mentioned that the human eye and the human ear is less than 1% each, and so you got 99% of creation out there that you have no idea what's going on, and so. Just the comedic mind just kicked in. Don't open a day spa of like, would you like to see entities? Then stay here for a week, and then for the rest of your life, you'll have that little green monster from Ghostbusters running around after you.
Well, let me comment on that. And what I would tell people is this: the people that come out to the ranch are not just curious people. For the most part, they're people that are getting ready to change their lives. They're getting ready to recommit their lives to something bigger. And I think what it does is it's like a bottle opener. It just opens them up, and then at that point they realize they're supposed to be doing something maybe more important or more significant, not just to them but to the world, because we're working on world projects out here. I mean, we've gotten information through the ETs that is tremendous and important for the future, and so I'm connecting with people from all over the world, and it's tremendous because not only for me is it very educational, but at the same time, I think that we're going to be able to do some things that are going to change the world.
Well, that's the interesting thing about because at this point, people who have never heard the story going, why did you stay there? And at the start, I think there was probably an element of pride of like, no, I bought this is mine, everything can go up a tree or whatever. But from finishing the book, the impression that I got was you were supposed to go there and have this experience, and you're part of a grander plan spiritually, if I can get sort of.
You're right. You're exactly right with that. It started off just being, hey, I'm not going to let these little bastards run me off my land. And then it became, as I realized that it was part of a much larger journey and a much bigger spiritual quest, I realized that I was just in a position where I needed to be here. I needed to do whatever this was about and find out more about it. And gradually it became no longer egocentric at all. And it became something about trying to do something good with it. And then with all the various different people that have come through and come out and told me, hey, look, what you're doing is really significant. It's really important. I started realizing that maybe I, as much as I thought it was bizarre, maybe I was chosen, to be part of something bigger. And so I've been trying to do something good with it, and I take it seriously. And, I try to spend time with everybody that contacts me and answer their questions and treat it with respect. And as long as they treat you with respect, that's the basis for something for the future.
Yes. It is a fascinating story. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sean David Morton's book series, Sands of Time.
Yeah.
Yep. I said to Bruce in a conversation yesterday, it's parallel almost what's happening with you. It's not part of the narrative of Sands of Time, but it's still in the same universe. It's story wise. What I did like about Sean was like, this is a true story. If you don't believe it, it's still a great story. And so it's the same thing here, where if people think, oh, it never happened, blah, 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 and it's like, well, you can't explain half the stuff that happens in it. It's still a fantastical story, which, I could see it being made into a TV series or even a sitcom, but that's just me.
It's funny you say that, because I have had 2 or 3 people that were, in the entertainment community say, would you consider doing a sitcom about it? And I've said, well, I see, we could do that. But part of me kind of says, well, if we do that, then maybe it's going to, some of the message is going to be missed, Yeah.
I think if we can use the term disclosure, where free humanity of the bonds that it's in, I think afterwards it can be used as a comedy, because the war is won in that if I can use that language. Then we can sort of make fun of it. But at the moment, because that's mentioned in the book as well, where we can talk about the Men in Black, where if you say Men in Black, you instantly think of Will Smith in the movies, which is a soft disclosure. And if you bring it up, it's like I think they're used in the X-Files in a certain way, which they wrap the truth in a lie, so they sort of get around it. However, with the entertainment aspect of it all, is they do like. Are you a Stargate fan? The TV show Stargate.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I have had so many people from these various different TV series, get hold of me and just tell me that they're fascinated with the fact that it actually is going on. And I tell them, I say, yeah, it really is, and they ask me a lot of questions and I answer them. And I tell them, I say, you guys really broke it open and you made it possible for people to understand sort of what this phenomena is all about. Yeah. And it's amazing how much of the Stargate, all 3 of the Stargate series, were actually pretty close to real. I really compliment the writers, for their research and their understanding of the phenomena.
And what I found fascinating too is, every episode they thank the American Air Force. I'm like, what for? What, the uniforms? And they did over 400 shows for Stargate SG-1. And on their 100th show, like 100, 200, 300, 400, they actually had its plausible deniability. In a TV show about clandestine alien operations, there's a TV show called Wormhole Patrol or something like that, right. Where and so it's the conspiracy heads just went off tap where they saw it. Like, they're telling us right to your face. They're explaining what Stargate's about. They're sharing the information from what's actually true. But if you mention it anywhere in mainstream media, it's like, oh, you're talking about a TV show. It's like, well, no. It's based, even X-Files as well, like Jordan Maxwell found it fascinating that half the stuff that they use is from experiences. And so it's not a big shock that they connected with you. They probably asked you for some ideas. It's like,
they sent me the collective series in a gift box.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they probably heard the stories and everything else like that.
I mean, they were already off the air by the time that happened, but, as far as actually creating new work. But, it was fascinating to have the entire series in one box. I thought to myself, wow, I guess I'm not sure, it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, it's like I'm watching them and they're watching me.
Yeah, it's all symbiotic and it's really strange. Bruce, from your perspective, you've gone through. You're obviously a changed person now because you've had this experience of just hearing what was the writing process? That's a better way. I'll condense it down to that.
Well, when I work on a book, that's pretty much all I do all day and all night. It's kind of like an OCD thing. I like to really just do nothing else because what that does is it charges your whole consciousness to the task. You start dreaming about it. You start bringing your imagination and your intuition and your creativity into it. And I mean, it's a nonfiction book, but you need a certain perspective on it to understand it. Finishing the book and going through the whole experience and digesting, Stardust Ranch, and also experientially because it did come into my life in its own way. I to this day I don't quite know what to make of that, and I wonder if whatever forces at that ranch did not want the story told. I mean, why bother me, right? I mean, and if it didn't want the story told, then you would
you froze there for a bit.
Oh, okay. Did the forces at the ranch want the story told or not? That's an interesting question right there. But I would definitely characterize the whole writing experience of Stardust Ranch as definitely a spiritual experience in my life. It adds to my understanding of the overall cosmology we live in at a very experiential level, which is the best kind of knowledge. Experiential knowledge is the best, Monty.
Yeah. Well, that's I think part of the purpose of the book is actually by letting people share, like they see the idea, and so when something happens to them, it may by tuning into that frequency, something may happen. They won't block it out. It's like, well, that's not true. But now, because they've heard the story of what John's gone through, and it's like, as I mentioned on my roundtables, it's the 4-minute mile. Humans couldn't run for a mile in 4 minutes till Roger Bannister did, and they've been doing it ever since the 50s or 60s. And so if someone sees the story or sees, they hear about this, the idea is planted there, and then it allows the imagination to go a little bit further into its true purpose. Because I did find that fascinating. Was that just in the last 2 chapters, or it was peppered through the book, wasn't it? Where the society. Go ahead.
Every story, first of all, you have to decide what you're doing. And if you're going to tell a story, your story has to have a structure. Most stories follow the 3-act structure. And that's not a commercial convention put upon storytelling. I mean, it's been there since the beginning. The Greeks wrote their tragedies in 3 acts. Shakespeare wrote in 3 acts. It's like a universal template. This was not a 3-act story. And so what I tried to do was I went from the specific and then to the general. And if you go back through the book, you'll see that each chapter starts to add more and more sort of philosophical perspective on what's going on at the ranch and the context into which this phenomenon might fit into our lives. And then you get to the end where we make our conclusions, which are, I think, pretty dramatic. But there's a lot of people saying the same thing now. It's a lot of people saying the same thing now.
Yeah. And for you, John, it would be you would just have that. Obviously, you released the book, so you're happy with it. So, we're happy with what Bruce done.
Monty, the big thing is this, and that is, I think a lot of this stuff has been going on for a long time. I know it's been going on around here. It's not just our ranch; it's the whole area. And I think what happened is that I was the first person that just said, you know what, this is very significant. It's important. It should be told. It should get out there. People need to know about it. As much as anything, I was doing counseling for a company out here, and I kept traveling because I did counseling in home, and so I would go out in the desert, to these places that were quite remote, and meet with these families, and they would tell me stories, and I would be like, wow, that sounds similar to what I'm experiencing. And I'm thinking to myself, well, now why is it that nobody talks about this? And so I'd ask them, I'd say, why don't you talk about it? And they say, well, we're not supposed to. And I mean, what do you mean you're not supposed to? And they would say straight out, they were afraid of consequences. And I thought to myself, well, that's no good. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the information out there and I'm going to tell the story. And that's what I've done. And I just believe in truth. And I believe everybody should take responsibility for, dealing with what they live with. And so I did.
Yeah, and the timing of it seems perfect with everything, especially like today. It's the 24th of March from where I am. Hello from the future, and we're dealing with the pandemic worldwide, and there's so many things where it's fake, it's New World Order. Blah, blah. From my perspective, it's part of the awakening, however it's unfolding. But even if everyone's under house arrest, they'll get bored of Netflix and they'll start going, I'll just look at that conspiracy documentary, or I heard the Stardust Ranch book is fascinating. It's a different story. If people are in lockdown long enough, they'll break out of that 40 hour a week cycle, and they'll start to explore, and there's more of a chance of awakening and moving forward. So once the pandemic's gone, we'll be in a completely new world, and who knows where we'll end up.
Yeah, agreed. And how long this is going to be.
Come in and talk about it, the more people are going to bring out even more. I'm sure this story, it's strange right now, the fact that there isn't very much that can compare to it. But I have a feeling that there's probably stories out there that are even, more bizarre and more intense than ours are.
Yes, and dear listener, viewer, customer, having two Roman centurions walk through your lounge room while watching TV is going to be something more bizarre than that. So it's
when you're drinking beer, Monty, and you have to go to the bathroom for the first time in Canada, we call that breaking the seal.
Yep.
This book breaks the seal. This book breaks the seal on a kind of UFO narrative where people talk about how it's affected their lives more personally and stuff like that. I think more personal way of telling.
Yeah, and I think it takes away the thought of doubt, where it's like, well, did I see that? Did I say that? You read the book, it's like, well, all of this has and still happening, isn't it? But you're in a better place because of what happened in 2011, and where you chatted with the good aliens, you got the bad aliens, and of course the 173 different shades of grey. No pun intended. In between. So, I watching one of your other interviews. You've got shared some photos, and you've had groups of people come down and experiment and record and check out the actual ranch. And they took a photo, and just happened to a grey was standing in front of the camera. My reaction to that was, because I'm so used to the fake ones, I almost disbelieved that it was real because it was real, if that makes sense. Like it's an actual true photo, and something's like, that's not wait a minute. It's because I've seen all the drawings and the fake ones, all the propaganda. When you actually see a true one, it feels like the energy feels a bit off because you're not used to seeing actual truth, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what.
Yeah. We've gotten to the point where it's, we don't even, we see them on a regular basis, and we don't even bother to get excited or anything by them. It's just, it's us, it's like they're furniture. We just look at it and say, oh yeah, there's one, and keep on going.
Yeah, and so is there a sort of truce between you now with the Greys, and then it's not the optimal situation, but you seem to be living together and there's not much interaction, or?
Well, I think it's because we had another type of ET that showed up about almost a year ago now.
Okay.
And when that one showed up, everybody always tells me, keep a camera by, keep your phone by you, try to get some photos at least of it. And so I got photos of it. I actually asked it if I could take pictures of it, and it didn't say anything, but it didn't resist. And so I was able to snap 3 or 4 photos. And at that time, I suggested to it that our big problem on the ranch was we needed one life form other than human to kind of run roughshod over the rest of them and try to protect us and be in charge. And apparently that life form decided that it was going to have that job. And so ever since then, everything has been a lot tamer. I mean, we still see things. We see things getting into it with other things, but they don't try to hurt us. And I've been very grateful for that.
Well, mine's like the latest entity turned out to be the marshal of Stardust Ranch. It's like, now boys, now you need to sit down and leave these folks alone. It's good because I guess everything sort of has to happen that's happening there. And if it is a way station, there's got to be some type of control, because if it's too chaotic and negative, it'll probably throw the balance out, which would affect, I'm thinking, the portal itself.
Well, that's a good possibility. I can't confirm it one way or the other. I hate to say it, but I never got the DVD or the CD that was supposed to come with, the portal.
Yeah, I used to watch that show too.
I don't have a clue how to make things work.
The CIA commissioned me to write that technical manual, but I turned them down.
And also from an extraterrestrial point of view, it's like, no, the humans just got to stay there and experience it. He's not going to go into the subway, all right? It's like, us wacky humans. Where to go? There's so much to talk about. I'm fascinated by the sword, where that's the synchronicity of the sword, where you were following that guy that overloaded the truck, hit a bump, and then the perfect weapon fell in front of you, and then the truck disappeared, where you couldn't return.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, is the sword a +2 sword, like in Dungeons and Dragons, where did you do any research on the sword itself? Because I've seen a couple of photos. It does look like it's not a replica, it's an actual made one. But do you know any of the history of the sword itself?
Not a thing. I think it's just a cheap copy of a real sword. I don't think it has any, innate value, other than the fact that it's sharp and it's useful and it works.
I was going to say, it probably does mean something to something. Yeah. Well, it's, if you're dealing with entities that can change frequency, a baseball bat, they could probably heal or phase out of the reality. But when you sever parts of the body, it's kind of hard to instantly heal from that. So,
well, it's literally, as I've explained it before, it's like an antenna. If you relieve the creature of its head, you break the antenna, it doesn't leave. It stays in this dimension. If you don't take the head, then it just disappears and goes wherever it goes.
Yeah. So how did you and Joyce survive this? Like, how did you keep your sanity? And being a counselor, I think that's sort of part of the whole "you meant to be there" thing for me. Because of counseling, you probably counseled yourself, if that sentence makes sense.
It's kind of ironic, really. I mean, here's my wife working for the FBI, and here I am as a master's level social worker and therapist. And, I mean, it's, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just like, of all the people in the world to have this happen to, it happened to us. And, my wife ended up leaving the FBI and going back to work in mental health. I worked in mental health until about 2010, and then I resigned and just began doing the ranch full time, because I felt that it was a bit unfair. Here I am out there, thinking I'm going to start talking about all this. And, I don't want to embarrass the company. I didn't want to embarrass, anybody. I wanted to be legitimate And, I felt that I couldn't really do that if I was going to go ahead and keep my practice and keep working in it. I mean, quite frankly, back in the day, who's going to go to a therapist that says that he kills aliens?
Yeah, don't put that on the business cards.
So I just had to make a choice, and things were so severe here at the ranch. We were having firefights with these things sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, and it was 3 and 4 or 5 times a week. It just got to the point where I just had to make a choice.
Yes, yeah, and I've just still got the image in my mind of, do you want to cure smoking? Do you need your greys decapitated? Well, I'm your man. Wide berth, yeah. That reminds me. You've got neighbours now because of over time the population's grown, but you've also had witnesses. Like, I know, are you still in contact with the witness that saw the Men in Black when they turned up? Because their reaction, their reaction would be fascinating. I mean, don't get them on now, but they've probably heard stories of the ranch, but then something significant like that where. For the listeners, 2 grown men around 5 or 6 feet tall, wearing black in Arizona in the summer. And you think about that. They look like the Blues Brothers, as John said, but they walked through the gate. Now, it doesn't mean the gate crumpled and flung open. They just sort of they transferred through it, didn't they? They like it was a hologram. Yeah, which I'm wondering if they are or go ahead.
They just walked right through it. They didn't bother to open it or anything else. And the strange thing, one of the strange things about them was the fact that the color of their skin, everybody in Arizona has a tan. I mean, you can't help it. If you just go outside in the daytime, you're going to get a tan. Yeah. And, these guys, they had absolutely dead white skin. They looked like uncooked chicken. Yeah. And they had sort of a kind of a slimy look to them. I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that they didn't look like normal humans at all.
Yeah. They want, if people at home want to check out what they sort of look like, the show Fringe. I don't know if you've seen any of Fringe, but they're the observers or the watchers are pale and they wear suits, and they're sort of based on that as well, which it's fascinating where I think that's where part of the doubt kicks in, because everyone's seen it being used in entertainment. And so, that's in a comic book movie. It's like, where do you think they got the idea from? They didn't say, And this has been going on since Roswell. And I think a major change in human history is atomic weapons, because of, I think the nuclear atomic weapons, they rip through all levels of reality, and it's creation destroyer. And that once we started popping them off, extraterrestrials was like, ooh, hang on, they're moving forward now. And I think that could be part of what Arizona and New Mexico, because there was a lot of experimentations. Well, they've set off over 1,000 bombs there, which comedically, I was like, the US has bombed itself over 1,000 times just to see how it works.
I know it seems bizarre, doesn't it? And the ranch is about 12 miles from the largest nuclear reactor, at least in this country and possibly the world.
Okay.
Wow. I did not know that. I wrote the book.
Yeah.
Because
it's Palo Verde, nuclear.
Okay, because even there seems to be orbs or ships seen where earthquakes or nuclear stuff. There's for whatever reason some ETs. Now the interesting thing is there's multiple races and species out there of ETs, so it's not just one or two. You've see, how many have you interacted with? Like 3, I think, at least.
I at this point, it's probably closer to 6 or 7.
Yeah. And where was going with that? I've gone blank. So obviously we're not supposed to. No, just it's with the radiation and everything else like that. So it's I think That's what I was going to get at. Have you spoken to like Indians, the Native Americans? With like, is there any fascinating tidbits? Like, yeah, we used to hunt around here 1,000 years ago, except for where your ranch is, because it just felt wrong or something like that.
Well, the ranch is actually again peculiar in the fact that I've had 3 or 4 different tribes that have visited with me, especially even recently, and they've said for I guess for a long time that this particular is very strange, and that they have been using it for ceremony. It's been in various different locations, a burial ground, not specifically the ranch, but in the area. And they've known for centuries about things. I mean, until probably the last 10 years, we used to still find these locations where it looked like they had altars that were made out of rocks that were out in the desert, and we would see all sorts of hieroglyphics and things cut into the rocks. I mean, people don't understand that Arizona has a tremendous Egyptian connection, and there's from the Grand Canyon and things that they found in the Grand Canyon going all the way back to the early 1900s. All the way, and the 20th century, that there's just, this place is like a direct connection to Egypt.
Yeah, which
May
sort
I
of
just say, may I just say, Monty, quickly, that John, is that your parrot in the background?
That is a combination of the parrot, and I'm outside in the driveway because it's the only light available, and unfortunately the dogs are a bit noisy.
What does tell Monty what the parrot calls the greys when it sees greys?
She calls them bad dogs.
Oh, right.
Amongst other things. She has quite an extensive vocabulary, and she has a bit of a biker type of vocabulary.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Used to be a sailor in a past life. Yeah, fair enough. With the apart from all the animal deaths, which I'm guessing that would be heartbreaking for you every time, because you have a small army of animals on the ranch. Ironically, how do they, apart from when those special times happen, and not special in a good way, where, I mean, is that a dog or a small giant? Bruce,
that's my American Staffordshire Terrier Soul. He's like my bestest buddy up here.
Yeah,
where I live, you're with everything 724, so you better like them. Your pets, your woman, your house, your internet. Yeah. You gotta like everything. It's 724 here.
Well, also you get fresh air, so you get high off the oxygen, so that's good. With the the animals on the ranch, apart from when unfortunately they get taken out to try the greys try and intimidate you, what is their reactions like? Do they know when weird stuff is happening, and all that? Because this you would have connection with them where. I'm sure, like when you're out in the desert, you're probably driving and thinking, "Oh, I can drive around that rock," and one of the dogs sort of does a quick woof. They spot something before you, type thing.
Well, they're definitely aware of things. What's very interesting is the fact that every animal on this ranch is abandoned, and so when they came to me, it was a big step up in the world for them because of the fact that not only were they starving and dying of thirst, but they were in a position where they would have died, relatively soon after, if I hadn't taken them in. And I've had animal communicators that have come out here and given me extensive explanations about exactly what the animals see, what they've dealt with, and what they think about being here. And they all love being here. I mean, they see it as something that, for them, they appreciate the fact that they're loved and they're taken good care of. And, we set up a charity to do that. Hopeful Hooves is our charity. And, we encourage people to donate. It's a way for everybody to give back. And it's a way, to keep doing the kind of work we do. Because, especially right now with this coronavirus thing, people are dropping their animals off left and right out in the desert. And, we're still getting them. They're still coming in.
Yeah, so it's a good thing that you're there, but it's a bad thing that that you're needed, if I can say it that way. It's a good thing that you're there. I'm going to lean towards that. Yeah, I did find that it's not distressing, but I could see where just you're just driving around the desert, which is huge and just sand, but you're finding all these animals, and like there's got to be a better way. That's probably the service that you're giving, is instead of letting the animals slowly die to death of heat stroke and with no water and starving, they can drop them off to you now, and they still live. That's the short version of it.
And mostly, I think it's not even so much a dropping off thing as the animals in the area all communicate with each other and they tell them where to go.
Yeah,
because they literally just show up on their own. It's not like we have a sign that says, hey, if you're homeless, come on over. They just show up. They know.
Yeah, that's the fascinating. Yeah, that's the fascinating. It's like if they're all and being all abandoned, I think it's part of their next mission of, after being with their owners, and the owners have like been pricks about it, and then there you go.
I mean, these are animals that just literally come in from the desert. They eat, they get watered, they get loved up. We give them medical attention as they need them, but everybody knows.
I lost you after everybody knows. You dropped out.
Sorry about that. Yeah, in the animal world here, the animals all know. I mean, we get wild animals, we get wild horses, we get everything from mountain lions and bobcats, feral pigs. I mean, everything comes in. We've had, all sorts of things that have come in. We've actually, believe it or not, we've actually had a kangaroo that showed up here.
yeah, that probably came from Texas. Those Texans are weird. There's apparently more tigers in Texas than there are in India. I'm like, what? How does that work?
I imagine they would thrive in Arizona if they do okay in Australia.
Yeah, it's very similar.
I don't know. I mean, you just see weird things here.
Yeah, you also it's not weird, but from the mainstream point of view, it kind of would be a bit different. Is you're actually seeing nature in its true form, where they're not in survival mode because you're feeding them and watering them. You actually have different animals hang out and just exist together. So it's as above, so below type thing. And I'm rambling, but that's what I do. I'm sort of jealous of you both now, because I live in a very small shoebox in the middle of a city. So.
Yeah, John, we're country boys,
we
John.
have over 30 water sources here on the property, and everything comes in. Water is everything in the desert, and so I make sure there's lots of water available for the animals. But I mean, even occasionally we get homeless people that come by. And I'm a social worker, so I try to make sure that they're taken care of, and they've got some kind of outreach program to go to.
With the animal translators, what was their reactions when they're getting told? Like, I mean, I talk to animals. Oh, that's fascinating. Oh, you should have seen the animal I was talking to last week about the aliens. Wait, what? It's like, oh yeah, you do something weird. I'm just going to take that and run with it.
Well, it's interesting because, I actually reported a lot of the sightings of various different things here to Peter Davenport at the UFO Reporting Center out of Washington State. And those things actually coincide, those incidents coincide with some of the stories that have been told to the animal communicators by the horses.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. Just... the normal people would probably just freak out. So I recommend reading the book. That would be a good thing. And one sort of question that's bubbling up so is there going to be a sequel? Are you going to write another book, or I don't know what about though, but
yeah.
Well, I mean, the idea was that this would be an initial platform to work from and then go from there. So as the story progresses and it becomes, significant enough to warrant other books, they'll be on the book. But we have to kind of work up to it.
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So is Bruce, anything that's been left out? Like, is there like a companion piece that you could add, or was it just all the important bits that were put in?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so much of this story that didn't end up between the covers of this book. I mean, if I were to just write a compendium of odd stories, like a Fortean encyclopedia for Stardust Ranch, it would be 1,000 pages. It's just, it's nonstop.
Agreed.
I mean, it's like film editors talk about the film that got left on the floor when they edited the final cut, right? I mean, I had to streamline this into a story. And so I think we did that well. What I want to say is one of the things that I stress is, look, you might have an opinion of what extraterrestrials are and what's going on in this world and our relationship with them and things like that. There's a lot of information out there. This is a book for someone who has sort of stayed out of all that information in a lot of ways, and wants to just pick up one book and go from, I mean, basically it's the beginning to the end. I mean, this whole thing starts in the 80s in North America, aside from what's going on in military circles. But for the general population, it starts with gray abductions. It starts with Kathleen Turner, that sort of stuff. This is the whole story brought up right to 2020, right? Yeah. And it encompasses abduction, contact, and then so much stuff that is just like, I don't even know how to describe it. You have to read the book. Sorry, I'm a little transfixed. There's a bullet ant here, which is the most painful thing you can experience as a human being if you get bit, by the way.
Oh, fair enough. We've only got about 5 minutes to go, so I think a good subject to bring up is the suppression of the information, because you've just explained how the book shares that, and there was it Professor Mack? There was a gentleman that was looking into the abduction side of things, dies, and then 6 months later, someone brings up, he's like, "Nah, that's all crap." I think this is part of the disclosure, the sharing of the information in this book, and it's allowing the idea to go out, because the mainstream has to keep that facade of no, that doesn't exist, even though there's so much information where, like, I've had people say aliens don't exist, that's a conspiracy. Well, I think if that's true, there's a conspiracy of faking all the videos, faking all the photos, all the contactees, all the abductees, all the experiences, the 30 ancient civilizations that all spoke to sky gods, and all of that apparently is fake. And so for whatever reason, it's not allowed to be talked about, even where you made a good point, Bruce, where the author that debunked the research, her next book was about pedophilia. It said it's not that bad, or something stupid like that, where
it doesn't really harm the children. It's the social stigma when they become adults that creates the trauma, basically, is what it amounts to. Yeah, that was that took place at Harvard, and the establishment was not ready to come out with any kind of an opinion on abductions back then. It's changed now. I mean, Stephen Greer, who's leading the Disclosure Project, is coming out with a new documentary film called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, how to have your own personal experience with extraterrestrials. So I'm not sure what that's going to be about, but make up your own.
Maybe do some more research than just that. It's like, don't turn it into, we're using a Ouija board, or playing Monopoly, or we're going to contact the Palladians and see what they're up to. Yeah, it's just, it's all part of. It's all part of what's going on. Even I could put forward this conversation is part of it, just a little linking, and hopefully some people get the book and have a read. If you're into science fiction, because this isn't fiction, it's reality. And because it was an industrial military complex, but there's like 4 or 5 now words added to it. How long is it now where it's just financial entertainment? They show people this side of reality, but they put it in with doubt, which is that plausible deniability. And so I enjoyed the book. I'm going to read it slowly now and absorb it a bit more because I read it for the interview, because I had that strange idea of I should read a book if I'm going to talk to the authors.
Attaboy.
Yeah,
we
kind of way.
We wish you'd set a trend in that.
Yeah.
You both spoke at the same time. I have no idea what you both said.
No, I was saying, Monty, I wish you would set a trend that way. You know, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, it's the authenticity. Authenticity. Dude, I need more sleep. And so, well, thank you, gentlemen. Coming up onto the hour. So, where can people find your book? Obviously, not in the library.
It's on. You can get a Kindle on Amazon or a paperback on Amazon, 6x9 trade back. It's a nice printing, nice typesetting, and a hardcover on Lulu, and that's it. We went exclusive with Amazon because if you go exclusive with them, they come up with a better deal. So, and they are one of the better distributors out there, you know.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Interesting. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been fun. An hour flew by, so obviously we were having fun as well.
Pleasure, Monty. Thank you for having us
on, Monty.
Most welcome. And if you have anything else coming up, please let me know, and I'll have you back on. So, you know, if because we even there's so much in the book we haven't touched on, like the Phoenix Lights and just that area of New Mexico, Area 51, and it's just all, to me, that's all linked. It's it's just state next door and so much more. There is a meme going around with the virus. It's like, well, you know, if you're scared of the virus and the government's distracted, how about we storm Area 51 again and see how that works out?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, and leave a nice comment. And we'll be back next week with somebody else who I've forgotten about. So there you go. I'm professional. I'm not making any money at all.
Okay. Be well, Monty. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. See you soon.